We need console exclusives. No, we don't.
Rather be shining like a treasure from a sunken pirate wreck. Scrub the deck and make it look shiny. I will sparkle like a wealthy woman's neck. Just a sec, don't you know? Fish are dumb, dumb, dumb. They chase anything that glitters. Hot beginners. Oh, and here they come, come, come to the brightest thing that glitters. Fish dinners.
What up, everybody? Gonna have to make this video pretty short because I keep messing up on it, so I don't even have as much time to work with now.
Well, I'm glad you're making it short because I need to make a backlog. I'm going on my honeymoon for a couple weeks. So if I don't respond to DMs for a couple weeks, or I don't respond to anything for a couple weeks, that's why I'm in Italy on my honeymoon. But I figured I would give you guys at least a little something to hold you over. I have a couple other videos scheduled for the next couple weeks, so you shouldn't be too without me for too long.
You know, people keep going on about how it's so anti-consumer for these game consoles to have exclusives and whatnot, right? You know, like how Nintendo's got Mario, Legend of Zelda, and stuff like that. Well,
It's me. I say that. I say console exclusives are anti-consumer. Because they are. Just objectively, they are. You have multiple gaming platforms, multiple sets of gaming hardware, and yet you have games that are held hostage on one of them? Why? You have games that are technically held back on one platform just so they can try and coax you to buy that one instead of the one that you actually want? Yes, that is anti-consumer. You don't have to dislike it. You don't have to disapprove of it. You can have your own opinions about it. But we have to acknowledge it for what it is.
Xbox got Halo and Gears of War, Forza, and stuff like that.
Those games are all on PC. They are not exclusive.
While PlayStation's got like Uncharted, God of War, you know, stuff like that or whatever.
Those are also on PC. Those are also not exclusive.
But I'm like, you know what? If every game is available on every system, then some of these systems wouldn't sell as well as they do. I mean, I'm just saying.
No, actually, certain systems would sell better if there were no exclusives on them. In fact, we saw that. The Xbox One and the Xbox Series X have been selling way better than the early days of the Xbox One, partially because they got rid of exclusives. Because you know what happened after Microsoft got rid of exclusives on the Xbox? They had to start making the Xbox a better platform. They had to make the Xbox more appealing now that they couldn't lean on games they were holding hostage anymore. And you know what happened to those games that went multi-platform? They sold exponentially better. Every single exclusive game that used to be only on PlayStation or only on Xbox and now it's on PC as well, they're selling very, very well because more people get to play them. I swear to God, console fanboys are like so fucking opposed to the actual console becoming better, and I don't understand it. Like, you realize that once Sony and Microsoft can't lean on exclusives anymore, they have to make their actual platform better, which benefits you exponentially. I like that word.
You honestly think that Nintendo, with their limited hardware, would sell as well as they do if you can literally get Mario or Legend of Zelda or any other Nintendo exclusive on the other platforms?
Yes, it would, because Nintendo's whole appeal is casuals. Appealing to casual players, appealing to families, and they have the handhelds. The Switch is both a docked and a portable console. That is the appeal. The Switch would continue to sell well if the games were somewhere else.
Just saying. I mean, sure, you'd still have your Nintendo loyalists that would go out and buy the Nintendo system. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to say right now, for me personally, if I can get Mario on the Xbox One or any other Nintendo exclusive on the Xbox One, I would just stick with Xbox because in my own personal experience, or I just stick with Nintendo if everything was available on it.
This video is from August of 2022. Why did you bring up the Xbox One?
Either way, though, I would definitely stick with one of those two systems if every, game is available on every system there is. Because in my experience, when it comes to hardware, it seems like the Xbox and the Nintendo system always holds up better. And what I mean is I'm not having to deal with like a bunch of system crashes and having to do a bunch of, system resets and everything else.
No. The Xbox One was notorious for having a lot of hardware issues and a lot of software issues and a lot of system updates that didn't actually do anything. The Xbox One was not a very powerful system, nor was it a very reliable system. And would you look at that? That's why it didn't sell very well. That's why a lot of people went to the PS4 during the Xbox One's lifespan, and that's why Microsoft ditched exclusives to make themselves more pro-consumer and draw people back. Whoa. Did you hear that? It's your whole video falling apart.
I'm not having to deal with as much issues and whatnot. Like, hardware-wise.
Yeah, I don't know what fucking Xbox One you had, but it wasn't an Xbox One.
Because whenever Microsoft, when they make a console, or when Nintendo makes their console, they make sure that their hardware works well.
Didn't the Switch launch with, like, insane Joy-Con drift? Like, didn't Crobecat make an entire video about the defective Switches at launch?
They don't, cut corners or anything like that, like what Sony does.
Far be it from me to give Sony shit for absolutely any reason that I can, but I'm gonna have to stop you there. It may not always be the best, it may not be the most consumer-friendly, but it is at least consistent.
That's one of the reasons why some of my PS4, I've had issues with every single PlayStation I've ever owned.
You know what? Actually, that's fair. The PS4 had a lot of issues. I guess I'm a little biased because I still have the same PS2 that I had when I was a kid, but oh well.
Because Sony cuts corners, and this is something I've actually found out. That they cut corners and they cheapen down on some of the hardware that they put in within their systems.
Newsflash, every console manufacturer does that. It's how they cut costs. Really, every tech manufacturer does that. Every single company that mass produces some kind of technical piece of hardware is going to cut corners in order to keep it flowing out as quick as possible. Some companies are just better at the final product being consistent than others, which is the point I was making, but it's really not even relevant to the larger argument.
And that's the reason why you're going to run into more system crashes and things like that when it comes to PlayStation as opposed to what you would on the Xbox or Nintendo.
But so, hang on. Maybe that's not off topic, because you know what you were talking about? Console exclusives, and why platforms need console exclusives in order to survive, and now you're talking about how certain consoles have more or less reliable hardware. But now you're talking about how certain consoles have more or less reliable hardware. Well, if the different hardware wasn't competing with one another, why would they ever improve at all? Have you thought about the fact that the different pieces of hardware competing with one another can fix the problems that you're describing, especially now that they're playing the same games? Have you ever thought about that now that Sony and Microsoft can't just hug on to their exclusive games and hope that you buy their system for the games without thinking twice? Now you'll actually think about what piece of hardware is better for you and which piece of hardware is actually the better piece of hardware. And if the wider buying public thinks a certain piece of hardware is the best over a different one, that different one now has more incentive to make itself better. The free market is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I don't understand why it upsets so many console fanboys. Because literally everyone benefits from different consoles trying to make themselves better in order to compete with one another. Like Xbox and PlayStation getting rid of exclusives in order to more directly compete with one another literally benefits everybody.
So yeah, the only reason why Sony keeps, continuing to succeed in terms of their gaming systems is because of their exclusives.
No, Sony continues to succeed because of their consoles. The Xbox 360 and PS3 were pretty neck and neck in sales, but the PS4 dominated the Xbox One largely because of the Xbox One's terrible launch. A lot of people switched from Xbox 360 to PS4 because the Xbox One was such a piece of shit. A lot of people are switching from PS4 to Xbox Series S because you just can't really get a PS5 right now. The Series S is more accessible. It's more affordable. Again, when the consoles themselves are competing with one another, you're going to see a lot of variation in who's on top, because you're going to see a lot of variation in the amount of effort that Microsoft and Sony actually want to put into their hardware. Sony does not have a big stranglehold over the competition right now like they did last generation, and I think you're really going to see the results of this new competition in a few years.
I'm just saying, man. And there's a lot of people. I'm not the only one. My brother's not the only one. My nephews are not the only ones. I've seen a lot of people that have literally transitioned from PlayStation over to Xbox because they're fed up with Sony's faulty hardware.
Or did they switch from PlayStation to Xbox because they can actually get an Xbox? The gaming economy is very strange right now because the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, the two big consoles right now, it's fucking impossible to get either of them. But the Xbox Series S is going to be in every single Target that you walk into. And since the Xbox as a platform has become so much more consumer-friendly with Game Pass and with the lack of exclusives, the system itself is more appealing despite being technically underpowered. And also, what is this with, people are fed up with PlayStation's faulty hardware? I haven't heard anything about PlayStation's faulty hardware in, 6 years. I'm not saying PlayStation has great hardware, but it's not like PlayStations are just dying left and right anymore. At the early days of the PS4, that was the case. But what was the competition to the PS4? The Xbox One. So people stuck with the PS4. The point I'm trying to make is if you were to find 20 people who own an Xbox Series S but also owned previously or still own a PS4, and you asked them why they switched, The reason is not going to be because of PlayStation's faulty hardware. It's going to be because, the Xbox is more accessible to me. I could actually get an Xbox.
Yeah, they're like, damn the exclusives. We'd rather have, actual hardware that's going to stand the test of time,
And the best part is they actually don't have to worry about not being able to play those exclusives on the PlayStation because the PlayStation exclusives are coming to the PC. You see that? You see how much better things are? Like you're proving your own you're proving your own fucking argument wrong. You see how much better the gaming economy is when you're not hard locked to one platform just because of a handful of games. If you leave the PlayStation, you can still have access to the PlayStation games if you get a PC. The same way that if you leave Xbox, you're still going to have access to Microsoft's first-party games. Isn't it a good thing to not be so hard locked to one platform regardless of what the platform is actually like on its own? As a general rule of thumb, if you remove the exclusives from a platform and that platform is no longer desirable to you, the platform probably wasn't good. And you feeling forced to continue supporting that platform that you don't think is good is anti-consumer.
So, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. If it wasn't for exclusives, the PlayStation probably wouldn't even be a thing, because everybody would be buying God of War or Uncharted or whatever other PlayStation exclusives there are for the Xbox or for Nintendo.
Okay, let's just say this is true. Let's just say that all of Sony's games went multi-platform, full multi-platform. And let's just say all of a sudden, all of Sony's exclusives, or all of Sony's first-party games started selling better on the Xbox and the Switch and the PC. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, all of Sony's first-party games started selling worse on the PlayStation. Do you not think Sony would take note of that and try to make their platform more appealing? Aside from the fact that it's just ridiculous that you seem to not think a company would be happy about their games selling on other platforms to other markets that they didn't have access to before. Like the fact that you think Sony's audience expanding to multiple platforms is a bad thing or that they would not be happy about that is fucking absurd. But if Sony wants people to play the games on their own platform and people aren't coming to their own platform to play the games, then they have to make their own platform better, which is an objectively good outcome for everybody.
So yeah. Not to mention you have the people who, well, since they prefer to achievement hunt or trophy hunt, if it was possible to get Nintendo exclusives on other systems, you'd have people going out and buying those,
Well, I have a PC, so I already have all the Nintendo exclusives.
Games for the Xbox or PlayStation instead of Nintendo. And here's the thing. Whenever one company starts doing bad because of not having any exclusives to help keep their company afloat, like what Sony does, or what Nintendo has done for a very long time, then...
You look like a younger version of Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse. And I mean that in the best possible way, because that man's a national treasure.
Some of these companies would probably stop making systems altogether because they wouldn't have enough funds or whatever to be able to keep making systems.
Well, you're right and you're wrong. But even if you're right, that's not even necessarily a bad thing. Sega used to make a lot of game consoles. You may be familiar with the Sega Dreamcast, with the Sega Genesis, with the Sega Master System. But Sega doesn't make consoles anymore, because their consoles weren't good enough. And that's just the way this works. Sega's consoles failed despite having one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time exclusive to it. It's almost like the platform is way more important than the games on the platform. And if your platform isn't good enough, you either need to improve or you're going to die. That's the way the market works. Stop being so scared of this. Even your precious Nintendo was not immune to this. The Wii U was a massive failure, despite having some of the best games of the 8th generation on it. And the more I think about it, the more strange I think it is that you are so opposed to consoles improving themselves. You are so opposed to consoles actually competing with one another, and I don't understand why. Are you worried that Nintendo may not be able to compete with Microsoft and Sony? Or that, Sony or Microsoft won't be able to compete with one of the others if they don't have exclusive games anymore? Because if that's the case, then you realize that you're basically admitting that these consoles could be better, but you don't want them to be.
Which means that we'd have less of an option when it comes to systems, And then it would cause a company to basically make a monopoly.
No, it's literally the opposite. If there were no console exclusive games, there would be more options in hardware. If there were no console exclusives anywhere and the consoles were forced to compete with one another more directly, how the fuck would that become a monopoly? Like, literally how? That makes no fucking sense.
Basically, instead of having to pay $300 or $400 for a brand new console, you'd have to be paying about double to triple that amount.
What fucking how? How? Instead of, oh my god, you're so fucking wrong. It's insane. Oh, instead of paying $300 to $400 for one console, you have to pay more than that. If you want all the console exclusives today, you already have to pay more than that. But if you didn't have to buy different systems for different exclusives, and you only had to buy one platform, that is one machine that you buy, how is that a monopoly? You buy one machine, and when you're making the decision of which machine to buy, it's like buying a car. Or like buying a TV. You just go look at the features they have. Oh, you compare this car to that car. Compare that TV to this TV. They'll all do the same thing. They'll all accomplish the same goal, but certain ones may do it in a more desirable way to you. How is that a monopoly? It's the opposite.
So, yeah. So at the end of the day, we need exclusives. Whether you all want to admit it or not, whether you like it or not, we need exclusives.
No, we don't.